Welcome back. So we are now in Module 5, lecture video number 3. And in this lecture we're going to talk about duplicating strings and what indexing is. And we'll talk about the curly braces. Okay. So let's start out with duplicating with the asterisk. Now, I've said that you cannot mathematically manipulate strings. Well, it's not necessarily true. It's not necessarily true. So, we have something here that we've got a variable start, and it has a value of a string, and that variable times 4. What does that mean, that variable times 4? Now, what that essentially means is take that NA space and put it in start 4 times. So in a way, we are multiplying that string 4 times. We're saying, hey, take this and we're going to store it in start 4 times. And then we're going to concatenate a new line character, or an escape sequence new line, at the end of that string. So it's a string of characters. NA space, NA space, NA space, NA space, new line. And then this one does 3 times, followed by a new line. And then end, goodbye. Now, this says print that string, and then you're going to print it again, then you're going to print middle, and then you're going to print end. How many lines of output will you see? 1, 2, because you got the new line at the end. 3, 4. 4 lines of output. If there were not these escape sequences here, how many lines of output? 1. Okay. So if I want to duplicate a string more than once, I can, in a way, multiply it or repeat it 4 times. Repeat it 3 times. Kind of like math, but not. Plus symbol, kind of like math, but not. We're not adding the values, we're just connecting them. We're not multiplying the values, we're just repeating it. So that's what that symbol does. We've got the other one, we knocked that out with the concatenation in the previous video. Now I want to talk about indexing. Now, in indexing, I had said we start counting at 0 and go from there. Start counting at 0 and go from there. Now, if that's the case, the train car in the very first position is train car 0. So if I look at this variable called letters, it's a string of the alphabet, all lowercase, And the A is the first car connected to the train that has an index of 0, index of 1, index of 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way to the end. Now, at the end of the string, there's something there that we don't see. Just because we don't see it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Much like at the end of a line of text on a page, there's a special sequence in there, escape sequence, that \n. I don't see it, but I know it exists because, much like right here, AF dash \n. Well, that's the only way we can come down to a new line. \n, new line, but I don't see it. I don't see the \n. But for this to get interpreted by the program that we're using and displayed on the page, it has to exist. So with that logic, here's a string of characters with an index starting at 0. If we counted them, came to the end, we'd know what that index was. So there's some things I want to talk about. One, I'm going to talk about a little bit early, because in the next video I'm going to talk about methods associated with the string class. Now, it's a class. The data type is a class, much like the different data types we've dealt with already. The float, the int, the boolean. There's rules that apply and there's functionality associated with it. So we've got some functionality that we're going to play with. And the functionality will let us know things about the string. Now, here's a way to find out what's in the first position in this string. Letters index 0 will let you know what, if anything, is in that first position. What if I said, what if there was nothing? There was empty string. There was nothing there. I declared it, but I never initialized it. Never put anything in it. And I said, hey, let's display letter 0. You might want to play with that at some point. Declare a variable in the workbook. Empty quotes. And then print letters 0. See what it does. I'm trying to think, why would it do that? Now, this string has a length. And the length is how many characters do you see there? Now, the how many characters is different than the index. That's car number 0, car number 1, car number 2. But if we're looking here, how many characters do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's 26 characters. Make sure they didn't leave anything out. So we got 26 characters there. If we have a length of 26, so there's a len or length, depending on the language that we're dealing with, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But there is a method or function associated with the string class that'll tell me how long this string is. How many characters are there? It'll return that value. So I can use that function and find out how long this thing is. All right. What if I wanted the last character I want to know what's the last character. Well, I can say len minus 1. That'll tell me what the last one is. Len minus 1. Or I can do it a different way and say letters minus 1. There's nothing over here. There's nothing to the left of 0. This minus 1 is essentially saying, go to the end and step 1 away from the end. Go to the end and step 2 away from the end. Go to position 25. 25 is how many characters in? Start counting at 0. It gets confusing if we're used to dealing with things starting at 1. But just remember, when we're dealing with this indexing, we deal with zeros first. I'm going to talk more about this concept in depth in a future module when we deal with arrays. Arrays are like strings, okay, kind of like that train, but I can put all kinds of stuff in an array. I'm not limited to just a character. And I can have arrays that are not just length, but I can have height as well. 2-dimensional arrays. That's kind of like if we looked at a spreadsheet in Excel. Columns and rows. And then if we wanted to take it to the next level, man, that's kind of like a Rubik's Cube. Rubik's Cube is a 3-dimensional array. Length, width, and height. We'll talk more about that in a future module. But conceptually, same kind of thing. We kept it simple here. Train car. Train's called letters. Here's the cars connected to it. 0, 1, 2, 3, all the way to the end. Hey, I want to know what one's at the end. Minus 1. How long is it? I'll use that len function. We'll deal with that in the future video. Okay. So that's indexing. How you find items at a specific position in a string of characters. If you haven't got this concept, play with it. If you don't understand the numbering part of it, play with it in the exercise notebook, because this is something we're going to have to get familiar with when we deal with arrays and matrices. We'll deal with that future module. Okay? So, if you try to find something that's beyond the length of the string, it's going to say that is out, that index is out of range. The range is from 0 to len minus 1. Anything beyond len minus 1 is beyond the range of that string. Okay. All right. So, we don't have the ability in Python to change character by character. That's what we were talking about earlier as something being immutable. We don't have the ability to change these things around. I can overwrite the whole thing, but I can't go in and change one character in a string. You can in other languages. They're bulkier, more bloated, if you will. but not in this language. Okay. In this language, you want to change it? Well, just go about it in a certain way. There's functionality I can do. There's functionality I can go play with. So if I named it Henny, I can replace all H's with P's. Call it Penny. This one is a little bit different. And I want to focus on this one for a few minutes. Now, this has been a little bit longer video than the previous ones, but this is something that's pretty doggone important. Now, in this, what this means is we're going to print out P, and we're doing it implicitly without the print function or print method. And I told you I'd prefer you to use print. We're concatenating together that P, uppercase P, with what? Well, we've seen this kind of thing before. We know what name 0 is. But what is name 1 followed by a colon? What that essentially means is the string name from index position 1 on. Everything from E on. So when I look up here, from E on. Had I said name 2 colon NNY, PNNY, or I could have said PE name and then the 2 colon, that would have brought NNY. So what this does is says anything from that character on. Now, what if I put a 3 here? Well, essentially what that's saying is everything from index 1 to index 3. But since we didn't put anything in there, we didn't tell it to stop anywhere. 0, 1, 2, 3. So it wouldn't have the Y if we put the 3 in there. Okay. Another concept to play with in the notebook. Play with indexing. Play with referencing ranges within the index. Here's a method or a function that is part of the string class, and I'm going to talk about these in the next video. I've got one more thing I'm going to talk about. I'm going to skip over some stuff. It's way down at the end here. Almost there. All right. We're going to deal with style in the 4th video. Come on. There we go. Here's where I want to be. Now, this is about formatting, and we'll talk more about this later on, but I just wanted to touch on this. So if I want to print out something, now I would use the print function, and for whatever reason, it's like they're adverse to using the print function. But I would have print, open parentheses. And what do we call this based on what we've been talking about so far in Module 5? That's a string. That's a string of characters. It's a string literal constant. It doesn't change. Every time we run it, we'll see the same thing. Well, not every time. Because this little set of curly braces means something. This little set of curly braces means something. What it means is a let's treat it like a placeholder. It's a placeholder for the format function. Here's a format function that's built into the string class. That format function can be passed multiple arguments. But there's a condition here. How many arguments can we pass it? Well, we can only pass it as many arguments as there are sets of curly braces. So if I've got 2 sets of curly braces, I can only pass it 2 arguments. Argument 0, argument 1. And here comes that, we're counting at 0 again. Here we are. So what this means is, here's a string. The blank is in the blank. I don't know what do you mean blank? Well, we'll go find out. It's a placeholder for index 0. Placeholder for index 1. So they are sequential in how they come up in this string. The first one, index 0. The second one in line, index 1. Third one in line, index 2. And so on. I don't have a limit on how many of these we can pass. But they are sequential in order. So with that said, we may do it explicitly and actually put a number in. And if we do it explicitly, implicitly the numbers got to match. What I mean is, if there's 2 of them, there got to be 2 things here. What if I said the curly braces 1 is in the curly braces 1 and only passed it place? No problem. The place is in the place. That's how it would work. And the place being a variable, it would go get whatever's in those variables. With this one, we're doing the second one first because this is 0 and this is 1. What's in thing? Woodchuck. The woodchuck is in the lake. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but it doesn't have to. It's not about this making sense. It's about this making sense. The 1, this is index of 1, 0, 1. The 1, that's the thing, is in the, it's whatever's in place. Okay? So we're explicitly doing it here. This is implicit. It just assumes, yeah, everything's in order, and we're good. Be safe and put your numbers in there, and then there's no question about what's exactly going where. Alright, so with that said, I'll see you in the next video, and we're going to talk about some more string methods.